In the stillness of the northern desert, when the heat of the day relented and the air hummed with secrets, Zainab stood at the edge of the dunes, watching the moon rise. It was a full moon tonight, glowing bright over the endless sea of sand, casting a silvery light on everything below. The elders of our village called it the moon of destiny, a time when the desert revealed its hidden truths. But for Zainab and her sisters, it was a night they had been wont to fear. The village of Maradi was nestled between the dunes of the Sahara, a small community of nomads and traders who had learned to live with the desert's temperament. Life here was harsh, but the people had grown resilient. They followed the rhythm of the sun and the whispers of the wind. Yet, there was one night each year when even the bravest stayed inside. It was the night of the desert moon. For centuries, the village had been plagued by a strange curse. On the night of the full moon, daughters of the desert would disappear without a trace. No one knew why or how, but each family in Maradi had lost someone. An aunt, a sister, a daughter. Zainab had heard the stories since she was a child, tales of a desert spirit that took the girls as payment for something long forgotten. But no one ever spoke of it openly, not even when her own sister, Amina, had vanished 3 years ago. Tonight, Zainab had decided she would break the silence. "I can't stay here any longer," she whispered to herself, her heart pounding as she glanced back at the village. The elders would call her foolish, her parents would beg her to stay, but she couldn't let another year pass without knowing. Amina's laughter still echoed in her mind, the way her eyes sparkled when she danced under the stars. Zainab couldn't shake the feeling that her sister was out there, somewhere in the desert, waiting to be found. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her bare feet sinking into the cool sand. The wind, as if sensing her determination, picked up around her, swirling the grains in small spirals. The moon shone brighter, guiding her deeper into the wilderness. After hours of walking, the desert stretched endlessly before her. The dunes rose and fell like waves on a frozen sea, and the silence was absolute. Zainab felt a twinge of fear, but she pushed it down. She couldn't turn back now. As she crested another dune, a low hum reached her ears. She froze, listening. The sound was faint, like the fluttering of a bird's wings or the rustle of silk. It grew louder, and then, from the shadows of the dunes, figures began to emerge. Women. Zainab's breath caught in her throat. There were dozens of them, dressed in flowing robes of deep blue and gold, their faces hidden behind veils. They moved with grace, their steps silent on the sand. And at their center was a figure Zainab recognized immediately. "Amina!" she cried, her voice breaking the stillness. Her sister turned, her eyes wide with recognition, but something was different. Amina's face was pale, her skin glowing under the moonlight, and her expression was distant, almost otherworldly. "Zainab," Amina whispered, her voice carried by the wind. "You shouldn't have come." Zainab rushed forward, grabbing her sister's hand. It was cold, colder than the desert night should have allowed. "What happened to you? Where have you been? We thought you were dead." Zainab's words stumbled out in a rush, her emotions overwhelming her. Amina shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I am not dead, but I am no longer of the living either. The desert took me, as it takes all the daughters. We are bound to this place now, part of something ancient." Zainab stared at her, confusion and fear knotting in her chest. "What are you talking about? We can go home. I'll take you back. We can break this curse." Amina's grip tightened. "No, you don't understand. The curse cannot be broken. We are the daughters of the desert moon now. Each year, one more is taken, and we are bound to this land forever." Zainab's heart sank. Then why did it happen? Why you? Why any of us? Amina glanced around at the other women, her eyes clouding with the weight of a terrible secret. Long ago, the desert was home to a great queen, a sorceress who ruled over the sands with unmatched power. She sought eternal life, but when she couldn't find it, she turned to dark magic. She made a pact with the spirit of the desert, offering the lives of her daughters in exchange for immortality. Now, every generation must give up its daughters to fulfill her bargain. We are trapped in her curse. Zainab's blood ran cold. But why hasn't anyone stopped this? Why hasn't anyone fought back? The desert is unforgiving, Amina replied softly. Those who try are never seen again. You should go back, Zainab, before it's too late. But Zainab couldn't accept it. She looked at the women around her, their faces solemn under the moonlight, and then back at Amina. I won't leave you here. There has to be a way to end this. Before Amina could respond, a shadow moved in the corner of Zainab's vision. A figure loomed on the horizon, cloaked in darkness. The wind picked up, howling through the dunes, and the women around her began to retreat, their movements hurried and fearful. The queen is coming, Amina whispered, her voice trembling. You must leave now. Zainab turned to run, but the shadow was already upon them. It was tall and formless, a mass of swirling sand and darkness. From within, a voice echoed, cold and commanding. You have come to take what is mine. Zainab stood frozen, her heart racing. The air around her grew heavy, thick with the weight of ancient power. She could feel the presence of the sorceress, the queen whose curse had plagued her people for centuries. I will not let you take my sister, Zainab said, her voice shaking but resolute. The shadow laughed, a sound like the desert wind tearing through the night. You are brave, but foolish. No one escapes the desert. Zainab clenched her fist, her mind racing. She had no magic, no weapons, nothing to fight this ancient force. But then, she remembered the stories her grandmother had told her. The only way to defeat the desert was to understand it. Your curse is bound to the moon, Zainab said, stepping forward. But the moon belongs to the sky, not to you. You may take the daughters, but you cannot take their spirit. The shadow paused, as if considering her words. For a brief moment, the wind stilled, and in that silence, Zainab took her chance. With all the strength she had, she reached out and grabbed Amina's hand. The other women began to follow, their veils slipping away, revealing faces filled with hope and determination. The shadow roared, its form unraveling as the light of the moon intensified. Zainab held tight to her sister, pulling her through the veil of darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the desert was silent once more. Zainab collapsed onto the sand, gasping for breath. Amina knelt beside her, her face no longer pale but warm, alive. The other women had disappeared, their presence fading like a dream. You did it, Amina whispered, tears streaming down her face. Zainab smiled weakly. We did it. We are free. The curse was broken, and as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the daughters of the desert finally found their way home.